The book that put nations to sleep. It began in the dimmest corner of the town's oldest library, the kind of place where sunlight entered reluctantly, as though afraid of disturbing the ancient dust. The air was thick with the scent of yellowed paper and a faint mustiness that clung to your clothes. Here, under a bottom shelf sagging with age, sat an object that most librarians avoided touching: the comprehensive history of the grain trade, 1301–1899. The book was a masterpiece of anti-design. Its grim gray cover looked as though it had been drained of color on purpose. The title was stamped in blocky, lifeless letters, the sort of font that graphic designers use only when they want to punish someone. Its spine was bent, not from constant reading, but from the sheer heaviness of its content. Its author, Percival Montgomery III, was a man legendary for his complete lack of flair. While others might have turned the history of grain into a lively tale of markets, merchants, and ancient feasts, Percival stripped away every ounce of drama, leaving behind only cold, relentless data. He had spent 37 years compiling shipment records, price fluctuations, and sack measurements, every grain transaction across Europe for 6 whole centuries. And yet, the book had a darker reputation. Legend claimed that anyone who opened it would not just feel sleepy. They would collapse into an unnatural, dreamless slumber. The librarians whispered stories, told of people dozing off within minutes, sometimes with their eyes still open. One man had allegedly fallen asleep so deeply that they considered calling a doctor, only for him to wake 8 hours later muttering about barley tariffs. This danger turned the book into a dare, especially among university students. The bravest would challenge each other. How far can you make it before you drop? Most never survived past the infamous Chapter 6, the socio-economic impact of slightly larger grain sacks in 1742. But some swore there was more to the story. They spoke of fleeting moments when the words shimmered and strange sentences appeared. Cryptic phrases woven between the endless statistics. A code. A hidden message. The problem? To see the entire message, someone would have to read it cover to cover without succumbing to sleep, and that was something no one had ever done. The first real attempt to break the book's curse came from Clara Dawson, a third-year history major with a dangerous combination of arrogance and insomnia. Clara prided herself on being immune to boredom. She could discuss medieval tax law for hours without so much as a yawn. So, armed with a thermos of black coffee, a pile of snacks, and the stubborn determination of someone who once binge-read the entirety of the Agricultural Acts of 1523, Clara settled into a leather chair in the library's reading room. The opening sentence was a masterpiece of monotony. In the year 1301, barley exports from the port of Calais showed a moderate but statistically insignificant increase over the preceding annum. By page 7, her mind wandered. She began to notice that the first letter of each paragraph spelled something. At first, she thought it was coincidence, but soon the letters formed words. W-A-T-C-H. She flipped forward. Another T-H-E. A message? Her heart quickened, but the book fought back. It droned on about the influence of seasonal rainfall patterns on the rye harvests of Lower Saxony. Each sentence was like a slow drip of chloroform into her consciousness. Her coffee was still steaming, but her eyelids grew heavier and heavier. By page 33, she was out cold. When she awoke, sunlight streamed through the library windows. Her notebook was smeared with drool, and the book was mysteriously closed. Clara knew 2 things. The legends were true. There was definitely something hidden in those pages. Word of her discovery spread. Suddenly, it wasn't just history students who cared. Code breakers, puzzle enthusiasts, and conspiracy theorists descended on the library. Even a few self-proclaimed treasure hunters took an interest. It got so bad that Mr. Whitaker, the head librarian, locked the book in the rare manuscripts room. He claimed it was for the safety of the public, but Clara noticed something odd. a small, knowing smile when he turned the key. The midnight reading. A week later, 3 friends decided to take matters into their own hands. Leo, Sam, and Priya. All grad students, all in debt, and all convinced the book hid something worth finding. Their plan: break into the rare manuscripts room at night and read the thing aloud in shifts. They armed themselves with energy drinks, flashlights, and noise-canceling headphones in case silence made them sleepy. At midnight, they crept through the echoing library halls, past busts of forgotten authors and long tables scattered with abandoned notes. The rare manuscripts room was protected by a heavy oak door, but Priya, who had once locked herself out of her own apartment 6 times in a month, was surprisingly skilled with paperclip lockpicking. Inside, they found the book lying on a velvet stand like some sacred relic. They began reading in turns. At first, they mocked the content. Leo read aloud a line about the marginal increase in oat yield during unusually mild springs with theatrical drama, and Sam nearly spat out his drink laughing. But as the hours passed, their jokes grew fewer. The sentences became heavier. Then it happened. Leo swore he saw a faint shimmer in the text. The lines warped and rearranged for a moment, revealing, "If you are reading this, you are closer than you think." The 3 froze. Then, just as suddenly, the shimmering faded back into talk of barley sacks and port tariffs. They tried to push forward, desperate to see more of the hidden message, but the fatigue was merciless. Priya slurred her words. Sam began to sway in his chair. Leo's flashlight beam wavered as his head nodded. One by one, they fell asleep. When they woke, the book was gone. The truth behind the boredom. The disappearance caused chaos. Some said the librarian had confiscated it. Others whispered about wealthy collectors of dangerous literature. Clara eventually tracked it down in Mr. Whitaker's own living room. She, Leo, Sam, and Priya arrived at his creaky farmhouse on the edge of town to find the man sipping tea beside the fireplace. The book lay open on a table. "You want to know the truth?" he said without looking up. Percival Montgomery III wasn't just a historian. He was a spy. During a war most people have forgotten, he had to smuggle vital information across enemy lines. He hid it in the most unreadable manuscript imaginable. No one would ever get far enough to find the code, unless they knew what they were looking for. The code, Whitaker explained, pointed to a hidden archive, a collection of documents that could change history. Not gold, not jewels, but something far more dangerous: knowledge. "Why not reveal it?" Clara asked. Whitaker gave a thin smile. "Because some truths are safer when no one is awake long enough to read them." Before they could press him further, he closed the book. And the moment he did, it was as if the air grew heavier, the room darker. They left that night with more questions than answers. Closer than you think weeks passed. The book vanished from the library entirely. Rumor had it Whitaker sent it to a private collection overseas, but others swore it had never left town. Clara kept dreaming about it. Always the same. She'd be flipping through the pages, the letters rearranging themselves into strange phrases. Follow the barley road. Seek the silent port. She'd wake with her heart pounding, convinced the dream was more than imagination. Then, one rainy evening, an envelope arrived at her dorm. Inside was a single page from the book, covered in dense statistics, and one shimmering line of text: "You are closer than you think." No return address, no explanation. Clara knew what it meant. The real treasure wasn't buried gold or lost manuscripts. It was still here, scattered across those pages, waiting for someone stubborn enough to fight through every single record of medieval oat prices to uncover it. She smiled to herself. If Percival thought she couldn't stay awake long enough to find it, he had another thing coming. The fight to stay awake. Clara decided she couldn't do this alone. She gathered her small anti-boredom brigade, Leo, Sam, and Priya, and explained her plan. They'd rotate in 20-minute reading shifts, keeping each other awake with obnoxious air horns, cold water splashes, and a playlist titled Songs That Are Impossible to Sleep Through. The first problem? Finding the book. Whitaker had retired suddenly, and no one knew where he'd gone. Clara guessed he'd hidden it somewhere no one would think to look. After a week of searching dead ends, she found it, tucked between two battered cookbooks in the dusty back room of a second-hand shop. They set up camp in Clara's apartment, turning the living room into a fortified reading bunker. The first night was a disaster. Sam misread a sentence about fluctuations in rye yields so monotonously that Priya dozed off mid-sentence, knocking over her drink onto Leo's notes. The second night, something strange happened. Around page 412, Clara's voice began to echo, but not like normal. The echo repeated different words, whispering faintly from the shadows. It said, "Port, ledger, salt house, hurry." The letters on the page shimmered faintly again, rearranging into coordinates. They didn't have time to check them before exhaustion hit. When Clara woke up, the coordinates were gone, replaced with yet another paragraph about barley sacks. But she had written them down. The archive of shadows, he coordinates, led them to the edge of the old harbor district, to a crumbling warehouse marked Salt House No. 3. The building smelled faintly of brine and dust. Inside, among rows of abandoned crates, they found a locked metal cabinet. Leo pried it open, revealing another book. This one was slimmer, bound in deep green leather and free of dust, as if someone had been here recently. They opened it carefully. The first page was a letter from Percival Montgomery III himself. "If you have found this, you have survived the trial of tedium. The world hides many truths, but the most dangerous are not those men killed to protect. They are the ones so unbearable, so mind-numbing, that no one will seek them at all. Within these pages lies one such truth." The Green Book contained transcripts, maps, and coded messages detailing forgotten treaties, erased battles, and names of people who had been quietly removed from history. If it was real, it could rewrite entire chapters of the past. But there was also a warning at the end. This knowledge will vanish from the mind of anyone who sleeps before the final page. They all stared at each other. Could they really read it in one go? Clara smiled faintly. "After what we've been through, piece of cake." They sat down, lit a circle of lamps, and began to read.